Giving someone complete control over someone else's life is too extreme a step and is susceptible to abuse and exploitation. Hi everyone, welcome to the Humane Factor. Now, when I was a kid, I, like most millennials, grew up on Britney Spears. I was a huge fan, and I still am. If you stand outside the bathroom when I'm showering, you're likely to hear me braying to one of her songs. That's also why my partner wears earplugs whenever I'm in the shower. I feel like we millennials have seen it all when it comes to Britney. Sadly, we also watched how she was demonized by the paparazzi and branded as a crazy pop star. Today, things are changing. The importance of mental health and asking for help is slowly being normalized. The narrative of people who ask for help being labeled as crazy is gradually being erased from our vocabularies. And now it leaves a bittersweet taste when we see the entire world rallying to free Britney amid all the tragic discrepancies surrounding her conservatorship. It's bittersweet because, in a way, we all knew on some level that what was happening to Britney was a cruel miscarriage of justice. And yet, it's taken us more than a decade to speak out and stand in solidarity with her. Now, what's happening to Britney opens us up to bigger questions. What exactly is a conservatorship, and who does it intend to protect? Does this system do more harm than good? Now, a conservatorship, which is a form of guardianship, is a legal mechanism set up for people who are unable to manage their affairs because they are severely impaired. A conservator is appointed by the court to take care of either the person's personal or financial affairs, or both. There are different types of conservatorships. Britney was put under what's called a probate conservatorship in the California Probate Code. Now, there are two types of probate conservators. A conservator of the person who takes care of the conservatee's personal affairs, and a conservator of the estate who takes care of the person's financial matters. Under California law, one does not automatically become a conservator of the estate if they are appointed as a conservator of the person. The conservator has to petition for both separately. Now, in Britney's case, she had conservators appointed for both her personal and financial affairs. And why was she put under this conservatorship? Now, in 2007, she had a public breakdown following her divorce. Her father then petitioned for an emergency temporary conservatorship, claiming that his daughter was unable to take care of herself amidst her mental health struggles. Since then, he has been given the legal right to oversee and make decisions regarding all aspects of her life, including her finances, health, business deals, and personal life. Over the 13-year period, he has shared this role with a private wealth management firm until they resigned. And then, in 2019, he stepped down from deciding on her personal affairs and was replaced temporarily by her caregiver while still retaining control over her estate. In an explosive testimony in June, Britney revealed certain horrific and chilling aspects of her conservatorship. She revealed that her conservators are abusive and she has no control over her life. She needs permission from them for everything, right from leaving her house to spending her own money. She isn't even allowed to choose her own lawyers or therapists. Now, she says she's been forcibly drugged with a strong psychiatric drug called lithium. And the most heartbreaking allegation is that she's been stripped of her reproductive rights. I have an IUD in my body right now that won't let me have a baby, and my conservators won't let me go to the doctor to take it out, Britney said in her explosive statement last month. Despite this testimony, the judge denied her request to end her father's conservatorship. Now, the important question is, does Britney even need to be under a conservatorship? Who do conservatorships intend to protect? A conservatorship is a mechanism that was created to care for people who are incapable of taking care of themselves because of severe cognitive impairments, like, say, Alzheimer's or dementia. It's a process where a court takes away a person's civil liberties and entrusts it to someone else. And the court does this because it weighs into the personal life in deciding that a person with a disability is no longer able to make decisions about themselves and their livelihood. And therefore, the court confers responsibility on someone else to make those decisions on their behalf. Because of how extreme this step is, it really is a last resort. Now, there are millions of people with mental health illnesses, and they've not been put under a conservatorship. For instance, John Nash was an American economist and Nobel Prize winner who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And while he was under some pretty controversial psychiatric treatment at the time, which included electric shock therapy, he wasn't put under any conservatorship. There's also Sidney Sheldon, a best-selling American author who wrote about living with bipolar disorder in his memoir, The Other Side of Me. He wasn't put under any conservatorship either. Now, that's not to say that Britney has either of these conditions. It's just to say that conservatorships are intended for people who are completely incapacitated, and not just anyone who's being treated for a mental illness. Sure, Britney may have had certain mental health concerns, but does that mean she is legally incapacitated? Of course not. In the 13 years of her conservatorship, she's been touring the world, performing, releasing albums, and working on a variety of TV shows. This suggests a level of capability that doesn't meet the standard for legal incapacity. Sadly, Britney isn't the only victim of this awful system. Now, according to a report by Human Rights Watch, millions of people are unnecessarily deprived of legal capacity and placed under some form of guardianship. This has led to a range of financial as well as other forms of abuses. While investigating human rights abuses against children in Serbia in 2015, a human rights report found that authorities had forced young women under guardianship to undergo coercive medical interventions. These included forced insertion of IUDs and administration of contraceptive pills, as well as forced termination of pregnancies. Now, in the US, there have been several instances of guardianship fraud where guardians have abused and even stolen from their wards. Take the case of April Parks. She was a private guardian who was sentenced to 40 years in prison for abusing and stealing from her wards. Between 2011 and 2017, she took advantage of outdated guardianship laws in Nevada and financially ruined several elderly people. The laws at the time required only a verification from a physician that the ward was mentally or physically incapable of handling their affairs for the court to appoint a guardian. No proper diagnosis was required. Now let's take a look at this clip where Matthew Hoffman, a lawyer from Battle-Born Injury Lawyers, explains to 3 News how April Parks took advantage of the system to financially wipe out her wards.
What happened is people like April Parks, who was convicted of this, she took advantage of the system. She would file what's called an ex parte emergency motion for guardianship, temporary. And she had a physician's assistant who would write up this report and say they have dementia, or they can't control themselves, they need immediate medical attention and assistance. And then Ms. Parks would say that there's no family, or the family are alcoholics and they're not reliable, they live out of state. The court would sign off on it, and they would just literally take people out of their house, put them into assisted living facilities, then apply for permanent guardianship, somewhat brainwash these elder people who would show up at court with no lawyers and be like, yeah, I don't want to be a burden to my family, agree to a guardianship, and then they would wipe them out, take all their money, everything. And these people were ruined.
Given how much harm guardianships and conservatorships are capable of causing, I'm baffled that these practices haven't been kicked to the curb altogether. Now let's take a look at a clip of April's victims and their families speaking out.
She had gotten a note signed by a physician's assistant there saying that I needed help. And that was all it took for her to become guardian over my wife and myself. The very next day, she took my wife out of the house.
In 2013, on Labor Day weekend, my parents were legally kidnapped from their home on all false pretenses.
My father and mother-in-law for 32 years was kidnapped by these defendants, taken out of their home.
April Parks made sure that she was isolated from her friends and family members.
For 6 months, I didn't know whether my wife was dead or alive.
She banned me from seeing my mom in the hospital.
Ms. Parks failed to protect assets as well as personal property of the estate. All of our family memorabilia was left in hefty trash bags on the sidewalk.
What April did was horrible, but it's also because the system made it so easy for her to do what she did. Since her conviction, the laws in Nevada have been changed. But I am still skeptical of the system altogether, given what's happened to Britney. Giving someone complete control over someone else's life is too extreme a step and is susceptible to abuse and exploitation. Perhaps it's time to get rid of this outdated practice entirely and replace it with a system of supported decision making, which respects the autonomy and will of the person. Depriving a person of autonomy is like taking away someone's dignity. And we shouldn't have a system that not only facilitates that, but also gives room for these powers to be abused. So I hope this video has been able to shed some light on the issue of guardianships and conservatorships in the context of what's been happening to Britney. If you'd like to know more about guardianship fraud, there's a documentary called The Guardian and also a movie called I Care a Lot. You should definitely check them out. Now, sometimes it takes something bad to happen to get us to look at the bigger picture. But on some level, it opens us up to various systems that are vulnerable and capable of being misused, and gives us reason to reform or get rid of them altogether. Hopefully, we are able to do that when it comes to guardianships and conservatorships. So I hope you liked this video. Please hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for videos every Wednesday and Saturday. Until next time.